Hey, Jim Toscano here, and welcome to the Monday night live stream, Filling in the Grooves, episode number 106. I always forget to say that. It's kind of funny, man, like thinking that it's up to 100 plus episodes at this point. Of course, the interviews started kind of in there somewhere. That there were playing ones in the beginning, more like teaching segments in the beginning, and then it kind of evolved into the interview platform that it is at this point. But I would definitely like to bring back some playing stuff and maybe do some of those with my guests. I think that would be killer to have like double drum sets and do a topic and work together. So anyway, but welcome whoever's hanging with us tonight. I appreciate you being here. This is, for me, this is going to be a really fun episode. Anytime I have friends on and of course, great drummers. It's always inspiring and super fun. A couple of little announcements. I want to mention that Simon Phillips is coming up the first week in August. He'll be on the show. And I just booked Annika Niles on the show, and she is coming off a tour with Jeff Beck, so we're still working out the date, but we're committed for August. So I'll keep you posted on the date for that. My good buddy John Fav is going to be on the show soon. Unfortunately, he had to reschedule next week's episode, so he'll be coming up just as soon as possible, and I'll let you guys know. And I also want to mention some companies, ProLogix Percussion, for all these beautiful practice pads back here. They've been so supportive, and of course, we've given away a few on the show, which has been super fun. And I want to thank Vader Drumsticks, and of course, we've done some giveaways with Vader, which has been super fun. Offset Pedals, Sabian Cymbals, Black Magic Designs, who has been extremely supportive. Up in November, I'm going to be doing a clinic at PASIC on technology in the drummer studio. So we're going to be basically connecting a bunch of cameras and Black Magic gear and of course drums and microphones and all kinds of fun stuff, and kind of just showing what I do from a technology point of view, and kind of giving like a crash course in how to hook up your studio with pro audio and pro cameras. So that should be sort of a different kind of clinic, I think. I think it'll be something really fresh and new, and it should be really fun. I'm going to keep it fun and light. So I just wanted to mention that. So my guest tonight is a great guy. We've met probably at PASIC, I don't know how many times, but always running into each other at PASIC. The drum community is so tight-knit. So if you've not been to PASIC, get off your butt and go to PASIC. And you can definitely make some really great connections and lifelong friends. I know I have. My guest tonight is a New York bass drummer who's just killing it. I don't know if you've seen his Instagram page. I will mention his name in a moment, but he's got a really great Instagram page with some killer videos, just great playing clips. And he's also played with the likes of Will Lee, which I want to bring that up with my guest tonight, because I did my first session. Will Lee was on my first session ever that I ever did. I would think I was 16 or 17. But he's also worked with Mike Stern, John Abercrombie, Joe Locke. And he's been a sideman to KJ Denhert for over 22 years. And he's also a teacher. He's a composer. He's got a couple of great records out that we're going to talk about. So my guest tonight, Ray LeVier. And here he is, baby. On the show, in the flesh, in the person.
Hey.
I had to play a clip. They're probably going to mute it. Cool, man. That could have been smoother, but I pulled it off.
Oh, man. Thanks for playing that, bro.
So from your record, Lost and Found, from 2018, the title track, Lost and Found,
Yeah.
really killer. I understand that you played all of the instruments on that record.
That is correct. Yeah.
And did you do the vocal stuff?
I did all the vocals, all the background vocals. Yeah. All on the box, you know.
Right.
I don't play guitar, obviously,
Yeah.
or bass. But, you know, I have some really good MIDI programs. So I did it all MIDI. thinking that I would replace it later. But then as I started mixing it, my engineer was like, "This is good. You should just leave this. Like, you don't need to replace, you know."
I will tell you that I never would have known that that track was not a real guitar.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
That's awesome.
it sounds spot on, man. Really good.
Right on.
So guys, you can get that. I have it on iTunes, but it's am I pronouncing your last name correctly, LeVier?
LeVier.
LeVier. Sorry. I should have
It's
checked
all
with you.
good.
I should have checked with you in the prehab.
There's two ways of saying it, LeVier and LeVier, and both are acceptable.
Okay. So I'll say LeVier. Lost and Found on I'm assuming it's probably also on Spotify. It's on iTunes, CD Baby, anywhere else. I don't know. What are people doing these days?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, man. But really cool. And I mean, also, just to mention, you have Ray's Way, which is from like 2009.
Yeah, that was a minute ago.
And that record, that's like a more straight ahead jazz album.
Yeah.
But you have Joe Locke on that, John
Hmm.
Abercrombie and Mike Stern on that record. Really killing, man. Really, really good stuff. Definitely digging on that. So, guys, check out Ray's recordings. So, very cool. And by the way, did you write? You wrote everything on Lost and Found, right?
Yeah, and Ray's Way as well. I had a little help from my friends, during the rehearsal. John Abercrombie was like, "Why don't you play it this way?" or whatever.
Nice.
So, or why don't we add a Latin thing here on the, and we just kind of ad-libbed.
There's no standards on that one.
No, they're all originals.
Because there's one that, like, man, I was like, for a
Oh
minute,
no, there's bass in the closet, blues in the closet.
Blues in the Closet. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a cool
Yep.
arrangement of that, though.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, man. So what I was saying earlier about PASIC, I think that's where we met, right? We met at PASIC, hanging.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think so.
there's so many different hangs there, but like you and I, we have a habit of like going to the back of the room and chilling. Sometimes all the way in the back,
Yeah.
and checking
Sitting
it
on the
out.
rug ledge.
Yeah, sitting on the rug thing in the back, and
Yeah.
but I like that vantage point, and so we check out clinics that way, and then that way, if you are scheduled for like a meeting or another clinic, you could pop out, and head to the next thing. But I think a lot of our hangs were on the back end of the PASIC Ballroom 500.
Yeah, it sounds good back there too, actually.
It does, yeah. It really does sound good back there. Yeah, man. So, and you've been so supportive. I have to say, like, out of all the folks that are in the chat, and I forgot to pull up the chat window and test it. I'm going to check that in a moment. But you're like one of my hardcore steadies, man. You're always in the chat window.
Man, I always try to catch every episode, man. You always have great people on here. I mean, obviously Garibaldi and Gary Husband and Weckel and Lenny White, one of my teachers actually. I missed that episode and I had to check it, once it went into YouTube, which was awesome interview. But
Oh man,
I was bummed I missed the live version of it. But it's an honor to be on your show, man. You have so many great people on here, and and people that are not so famous as well. Like names are escaping me, but you've had some really, really great people on. Everything. It's always informative every time.
thank you, man. Yeah, I try to. I think, I'm trying to bring a mix and bring in the drummers that everybody knows, and then bring in some educators that are just crushing it in their
Yeah.
towns. Or, I had Sperry Karas on, who's in Germany, and he's like was a swing drummer from like a long time ago, and he's in his 90s, and he was an amazing interview, man. So
Wow.
it's just fun to bring a mix, So
Love
and I
it.
appreciate
You're doing a
you.
great job, man.
Thank you, brother, and I appreciate you taking the time to hang. So
It's a-
so besides this record, which just came out, you've been playing around town a bit. So and unfortunately I haven't caught you yet, but I know you played the Cutting Room, not that long ago. You've been doing a bunch of dates, and you've had a great lineup of musicians. So tell me a little bit about the gigs that you're doing lately. What material is it kind of focused around, and what are those gigs all about?
Well, the last cutting room gig we did had Willie playing bass and Dave Gilmore on guitar, not the Pink Floyd Dave Gilmore.
Right.
Um, and Aaron Hike played sax and Etienne Stabwick on keys. And it was a thrill to play with these guys. I mean, it was just like going on a magic carpet ride. And it was basically most of the tunes from Ray's Way, from the jazz vibe. And I added a couple of other covers. What did we do? We did Palladium by Weather Report and
cool.
Protocosmos from the Tony Williams Believe It record. And that was an ass kicker. I mean, I always wanted to learn that tune, and such a fun tune to play.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I've been doing that, and I had a residency for 23 counting the pandemic. 23 years at the 55 bar every other week with KJ Denhert, and as you know, the place just closed, which was a total bummer.
I know, man. So crazy to think that it's actually gone. I mean, there were points where it looked like it was going to go away and then didn't.
Yeah,
and
I still can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's a fixture, right? I mean, my fusion band in the early '90s, we were playing there all the time. It's like, yeah, and it's such a iconic room for us. All these little clubs in New York where the music is just off the charts. Really like divey bars with great music,
Yeah. And I came up in that bar, when I was going to William Patterson, some guitarists were like, we're going to the 55 bar tonight. I was, where's that? They're like, just come. Mike Stern's playing. So I show up and I'm sitting at the front table, and Mike Stern, every time he turns the neck of his guitar, it's like, whoa, it's like that close where it's just so, you're like two feet away from Mike's face and his guitar. And so that was my first experience, going to check out music in New York City. And I think I was 20. Yeah, I was 20 or 21 at the time. And
wow.
And once I went to the 55 bar, I was like, I got to go every night and check everybody out. And then I found Wayne Krantz, and I was just he played Thursdays and forever. And I would pretty much try to go every Thursday that I could, And so Zach Danziger and Lincoln Goines were the cats laying it down.
Yeah.
And actually, John Riley, who was my teacher at William Patterson, that was the other reason I wanted to go to the 55 bar, because I was studying with John at William Patterson. And I think John was like, oh, I'm playing tonight with Mike. And so I had to go and support my teacher.
Yeah, man. Oh my God. The early days of, with Zach Danziger playing, man, those were some great nights, man.
Oh man. And then 2 Drink Minimum came out, and it was just, Wayne had this guy with a digital audio thing with a stereo mic right there at the front table. And, 2 Drink Minimum was just from those recordings.
Isn't that nuts?
And so I went over and over and over that CD trying to rip off Zach,
Yeah.
And such a great record. And the drums are just right there and in your face and unprocessed. And,
Yeah, man.
So many great bands I've seen there. Just, I could go on all night about some of the amazing times I've had there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great room. I remember then later seeing Mike Pope playing bass with I guess he was playing with Mike Stern on a couple of gigs, and then seeing Lenny Stern there as well.
Yeah.
Man. And then my little band would come in and play, and I remember Rodney Howard. Do you know Rodney?
I know of him.
Okay, yeah, he's a good friend. We played in the same club date,
Right.
set up. So I remember him coming down to my Fusion Bands gig and me being nervous as shit because, you know, he was just coming to town, but he was kind of, you know, a hot shot, you know. But just fun memories, man, with that place, you know.
Yeah. I was doing a gig with Tana Alexa, who is Antonio Sanchez's wife.
Oh wow.
And so she hired me to do a gig. And so in walks Antonio and Cliff Almond, and they're sitting at the table right in front. And I was like, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Oh my
And
God.
I walked over the table. I'm like, sorry, you guys got to leave. Got to go.
Got to get out of here. Oh man. I'm signing into my chat. I apologize that I'm doing this at this moment, but I just realized like I'm not signed into the chat window,
Yeah, do your thing, man.
which means if I miss that, it's probably not going to be a good thing. People are going to be mad at me. All right, hold on. Here we go. Right. Oh, come on, really? It's going. I guess since I didn't sign in because I didn't stream last week because of 4th of July.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
making me do the security check where you click the boxes with all the vehicles in it.
I love that.
Now I have to click the boxes with all the buses in it. Oh my God. I should have put that up on the screen. All right, we're into the chat. All right, guys. Sorry if I missed anybody. All right, there we go. We're logged in. Okay, I digress. Back. So you studied with John Riley, man. What a great teacher.
Man, it's just human dictionary.
Yeah.
And just I studied with Horace Arnold and John Riley. So I studied with Horace, which was, a completely different vibe than what John was doing. With Horace, he played piano very well. So he would just play piano and be like, play some drums. Let's just, and then he would give me some tips on what you could do, what you shouldn't do,
Nice.
And so that was a learning lesson unto itself, the way we approached it. And we went through books and stuff too. But then when I studied with John, it was, just any lick you wanted to know from any drummer. He'd be like, oh, you want Tony licks? Brr, oh, you
Nice.
want Weckl licks? Brr, when you want Dennis licks, and he would just write them all down. And he was doing the DCI videos at the time. And so he was transcribing all that. So his transcribing skills were just off the hook.
Oh my God.
And he was telling me that he transcribed all of Weckl's first video and second one as well. But the first video, the only mistake he made was a ghost note that was on the snare and it was supposed to be on the hi-hat. And this was before the days of video. So he had this cassette recorder that you could slide the slide button and slow it down, but it was like, it slowed down the audio to sound awful. But he like transcribed all this stuff just with audio.
Oh my God.
And then, and the video, of course, once he had access to the video. But it just blew my mind that, someone was just so adept on that level that.
Wow.
So that was a learning lesson unto itself. And but John showed me so many great ways to approach the Ted Reed book and, stick control. And I was studying with John, and also out of college, I was studying privately with this guy, Sal LaRocca, no relation to Pete LaRocca. But Sal actually went to William Patterson, and he studied under Ray DeRoche in the classical department.
Oh wow.
And Ray DeRoche, if anybody knows Ray DeRoche, they know that he ran the best percussion ensemble, in the country, pretty much. I mean, the guy was just really, really knew his stuff. He recorded with Stravinsky and just a super cool dude, but a real, pusher. And so all the classical percussion people that were there, I was just blown away. Like you just go by and you hear them do a marimba hour after hour, and just and then every Thursday there's a concert, and some of the concerts were students. So you get to see a lot of the classic percussion stuff, these guys performing. And the whole experience at school was just completely eye-opening. I had never played with an upright bass player before I got to William Patterson. I was like raised on rock and metal growing up, and I just wanted to be a rock drummer and a metal drummer. And it's a funny story how I slowly, came into jazz through the back door. And it really happened. I was in this rock band called Malicious Intent. And, this was during high school. And these guys were like, just kind of whatever. And there was a lot of beer drinking and whatever. And when the beer was done, the rehearsal was over. And these guys would just love to drink beer and rehearse really, really, really loud. And I think I lost most of my hearing at these rehearsals. So we did a recording, and the lead singer is a little older than everybody. And he's like, I was in this band and I know how things go. And this is how we record. We do the guitars and the bass, then we do the drums. So I was like, okay, I didn't know anything about anything. So I'm listening to this guy, and they're drinking, and their time is just wavy gravy. And now it's time for me to play the drums. And I'm like trying to keep up with this stuff. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? I can't record. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was studying with this guy, Keith Crane, at the time. This was before I went to Sal. I took 2 lessons from Sal when I was in high school, and he scared the crap out of me because he just wanted me to learn rudiments. And he looked like Charles Bronson, and he wore a leather jacket and he had like a sports car. And if I show up late, for the lesson, he's like sitting on his car in my driveway, like, you're late.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you? And he had this like real flippant Italian thing that I just, he meant well, but he scared me. And so I took 2 lessons, and I was like, I don't want to study with this guy, Mom. He's just pushing all these rudiments, and I just want to learn some beats. And so I started studying. We moved, and I started studying with Keith Crane. And Keith started getting me into, realized that, you got to give this kid some beats to like, give him something he's into, and then we'll push rudiments on him a little bit. So going back to the recording, I was like, what's the matter with me? And he's like, let me get this straight. You recorded the bass and the guitar first. He's like, all right, let me ask you a question. When you build a house, do you build it from the roof down? And I was like, no. He's like, correct. You build the foundation first. And the foundation is the rhythm instruments, which are bass and drums. So I was like, oh, okay. So I'm like learning, I'm totally, green and wet behind the ears, and just like didn't know anything about anything. So long story short, the band ended, and I was like, screw these guys. I'm going to go to school and learn jazz, because I was reading every issue of Modern Drummer, and every drummer that was in there, that was a rock drummer, funk drummer, blues drummer, didn't matter. They studied jazz at some point, and they were naming names, of jazz drummers. And so I started checking out jazz drummers, and I was like, well, if I'm going to do this for a career, I was graduating high school, and I realized I'm going to do this for a career. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a drummer and a musician. So I was like, I got to go to school and learn, the right way. And, so that's how I ended up in William Patterson. And I did my 3-song demo with my father, who's a very great keyboard player. And he plays organ as well. So he played organ and I played drums, and we did like 3 songs. It was like How High the Moon and Oleo and one other, Girl from Ipanema or something like that. And so they accepted me, and I was like, whoa, okay.
Awesome.
And so went to William Patterson, and they stuck me in with like the advanced guys that were like sophomores and seniors. And like, they literally threw me into the lion's den, and like they counted off the tune, and I'm hearing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So every time we play, I'm like backwards, and they're like, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like, I couldn't even wrap my head around, clicking 2 and 4. So I realized immediately, like, sink or swim, like, and so that's like, I doubled up my lessons with Sal, and he had me playing along with all these cassette tapes of Art Blakey and Philly and Tony, and, really turning me on to all the stuff that I should be hearing. And So, meanwhile, I'm in school and you're supposed to learn like 20 standards a week or something like that. Like they just keep throwing standards at you. And, but it was an amazing experience. And, it was just incredible time of my life.
That's like the best thing that could have happened is that they threw you in with all those guys and were just like, go, do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Because there were some guys that were there, like, it's funny because my friend Joel Newton, fabulous guitarist, we like went to school together there, and then I bump into him in Nyack, in my hometown. I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I live in Nyack." I'm like, "Oh my God, me too." But
Nice.
he was telling a funny story, and the way he tells it's so funny. He was talking about one of the students, and he was like, "Oh my God, if this guy is not a professor here, I'm quitting guitar tomorrow." And it turns out he was a student. He wasn't a professor, but he was on such a level of playing. But it was the whole gamut. There were guys that could barely play like me,
Right.
and there were guys that just were like already way far down the jazz road and bebop road. And, so it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, man. I mean, to that note, you meet people that you're like, man, how's this guy already doing all this stuff at this young age? But it's really the
Yeah.
exposure level. It's like it's different for everybody, right? So it's like everybody's path and journey is different. Like my dad was listening to classical music pretty much only when I was a kid, so I was
Mhm.
exposed to Philharmonic and all that kind of stuff. He didn't introduce me to jazz until later, and he gave me a Brubeck record. But it's like
Oh,
it's pretty interesting that some people it's in the household or
yeah.
in the case of somebody like Simon Phillips, where it's like his dad was a band leader. It's like different exposure levels, right? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what a great experience at college.
Yeah.
And by
And
the
I
way,
come from, there's musicians in my family, but I was very removed from it when I was a kid. There's a picture of me sitting on the piano bench with my dad, and I'm just kind of like looking off, like, and he's trying to give me a piano lesson. And like, I didn't want anything to do with it. It was just like, let me think. I can be inside and play the piano, or I can be outside riding my bike in the sun and with my friends. And there was just no comparison to the latter. And um, I got to music later, but my father he went to Juilliard, um, and he was in the Navy band. And that's how he met my mom, actually, when
oh
he was
wow,
stationed down in Charleston, South Carolina. My mom was a blues singer. And so he met her and fell in love with her. And I think my mom blew out her voice one night, and that was the end of her career. But
oh wow,
she would play at this place called the 5 o'clock Club, and they would be all the way open till 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's how they met.
wow,
They had a piano player in the band that wasn't cutting it, and the saxophone player was like, "Yo, your piano player is not cutting it. Let me bring my friend Earl down here." And so that was my dad, and they met. And my mom's from South Carolina, and she ended up moving up to New Jersey, and the rest is history.
wow.
But
Wait,
and my Aunt Barbara, she was the one that really excelled, and she studied with Lenny Tristano, and she
oh,
studied with Chick Corea, and she was just on fire. But she just, someone said something to me. Not everybody can be a musician. It has nothing to do with talent,
right,
and I didn't really get that until I realized you get a little older and you realize, like, my Aunt Barbara, she should have been like the next burning, you know, musician out there, and she never had internally what it took to, the hang.
right,
Like, you got to have the hang. Like, if you don't have the hang, like, you can't do it.
yeah, yeah,
Because my good friend Jonathan Mover said, think about it. You're only on stage for 2 hours, or 90 minutes, whatever. And then the rest of it, you're on a tour bus, or, you're in close quarters with the rest of this band. And if you can't hang, it's
ain't gonna happen.
right, right.
Yeah, that's so
But
true, man. That's so true. I mean,
and
that's the
my
lifestyle.
sister, she's a classical trained pianist, and put anything in front of her, she's like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah," but if you put jazz in front of her, it's not written out. She's like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, yeah,
But And my father was a piano tuner and refurbisher as well. That's how he put food on the table. Back in the day before electronics and Casio keyboards, if your kid wanted to play piano, he needed a piano. So my dad would buy these junkers, and my brother and I would basically rip everything off the piano and take all the old felts out. And if we found any change or money, he's like, you can keep the change or money if you. So we're always like, well, look for the change. We're like helping my dad out. And so he would, buy these junkers and just get them tuned up and put new strings or whatever he needed to do, put a new finish on it. He could do all of it. So, and then flip them. You just get them out, and he had a little junky trailer, and he had this old green Chevy station wagon, and, no babysitter. So we would like go with my dad and wait in the car, and, but, growing up, all I heard was ding, 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 like all night.
Oh my God.
And then check the unisons, and then bling, 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 play a little song, and then back to ding, ding.
So that's your point of reference for music. Ding,
exactly.
Ding. Oh my God. That's hilarious. Oh,
yeah.
Oh my God.
But I didn't gravitate toward music until there was a drum set that appeared overnight in my living room.
Okay. Wait.
And my dad got this red sparkle Slingerland kit, like a 4-piece kit. Or I don't even think it had a snare drum. I think it was just a 3-piece kit, like floor tom, rack tom, bass drum. And so my sister decides she doesn't want to play piano anymore. She wants to play drums. So my dad's like, all right, let's get you a drum kit. So my sister like gets the drum kit, and she lasted for like one day. She's like, nah, I don't think I want to play the drums.
Oh, wow.
I like piano. So this kit just was sitting around, and my dad used it for rehearsals. So one morning I came down, and my first introduction to drums, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I see this drum kit, and I touch the skin of the head, and it makes this sound that I was like, wow. So I like, don't ask me why, but I went into the kitchen, and I was like, this would sound cool if I stuck a knife through the head.
Oh no.
So like I grabbed the sharp knife, and I started going like, like a straw through the.
Yeah, like a cuica.
McDonald's. Yeah, like a cuica. And I'm like, wow, this sounds cool, right, Dad? And my dad's like, oh dear God. No, step away. Give me the knife. It's not how we play the drums.
Disarm the child.
So, but, and then anyway, I didn't gravitate toward drums even in that moment, except for sticking a knife through the head. My parents got divorced a few years later, and, I ended up being with my dad on the weekends. So I'm at my grandmother's house with my dad on the weekend, and there's nothing to do, and I'm bored, and I'm at grandma's, and I go down the basement, and there's the kit, like buried behind some other stuff. So I was like, Grandma, do you mind if I pull these out and play them? And she's like, yeah, go ahead.
And do you have a knife?
I think my dad got new heads on them at that point. But so I start banging on them like the Brady Bunch or whatever, and like, just doing my thing. And my grandmother, 5 minutes later, she's like, no. I don't want, no. Get these things out of here, take them home. So I took them home, and I set them up in my bedroom. And I still knew nothing about how to play the drums. And this was how clueless I was. I had my friend come over, and I'm like, play the hi-hat. And he would go on the hi-hat, and I would go boom, cat, boom, boom, cat, boom, cat. And I didn't know that this hand should play the hi-hat too. I mean, I just like,
oh, man.
So then I go down the street, and my friend Dave is just started taking drum lessons. And he's got 2 speakers set up here, and he's got his kit, and he's like, yeah, check it out, man. I'm trying to play along to this Boston tune. And he's playing it like, he's pretty much got it down. And it was magic. It was just like my moment of like.
Which Boston tune, by the way? Do you know?
I don't even know, man. Probably More Than a Feeling or something like
right?
that.
All right, go ahead.
And wow, it was just like magic. Like, how is he doing this?
Yeah.
And so it was like, you got to come back and give me a lesson and show me how you do. So I learned how to do this with the hi-hat and play the snare on 2 and 4. And he wrote down a little chart for me. And so that was like my first drum lesson I ever had. And so that was the only groove I could play at the time.
Hey
And
man, that's a pretty amazing intro to drums though, because first of all, the kit, Red Sparkle Slingerland kit, right? Which I had a Red Sparkle Ludwig kit, so it's very near and dear to my heart when something's Red Sparkle. And and having that available, and then having your grandmother tell you to take it home, it's like as if that was meant to be, right?
yeah. And then the kid down the street taking lessons,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
then that Boston tune, and you went down there and heard it, and you were like, "Oh, whoa, he's playing
Yeah.
that thing." Oh,
And
that's
like
great.
his parents, they had the really nice basement den, and he had these big speakers like right behind him, and he had the ultimate setup, and I was just like blown away by like what this guy had, and so I just wanted to be like him at that point.
Oh man.
And then so I got this one groove under my belt, and boom, I get caught in a fire, and I'm in a hospital,
What
and
age is this?
12.
12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Holy crap.
So we had this chicken coop in the backyard, and it was like a 2-room chicken coop, and we were renting from this guy, Mr. Ogilvy, who owned a private school. It was called Devonshire College Preparatory School. And my brother was going to that school. He had a little bit of a learning disability, and he had ADD. And this is before anybody knew what ADD was. And like,
Yeah.
he just couldn't sit in the chair. He was just like freaking out, and he couldn't focus. And so they're like, your son should be in private school to get, one-on-one attention. So they had classrooms. It was basically a big house that they converted into a school. And there was like 5 to 6 kids in one classroom. And some of the kids were the opposite. They were complete geniuses that were way too fast than anybody else. And they couldn't sit in a classroom and be bogged down. They were just like, light years ahead of. So like the smart kids took my brother under his wing, and they're like, no, here's how you do algebra and blah, blah, blah. So we were renting this house right next door, and the police would come over to check doors and stuff, and they kept knocking off the alarm system, and then you'd hear the alarm go off, and then we were kind of the groundskeepers. We go over there and turn the alarm off, and keep an eye on the place. And in return, they let my brother go there at a reduced rate because it was a very expensive school, from what I remember.
Right.
So we were there on the grounds of Devonshire, and that's where this chicken coop was. And I asked Mr. Ogilvy, is it okay if we build a fort out of this? And he's like, yeah, sure. So that was our jam. We were like camping out in the backyard, and we had a great time for like 2 summers. And then one night we went to sleep. We had a candle burning on the wall, and it fell into the wall, and the whole place just went up.
Oh.
And
Whoa.
I was the only one sleeping. My brother and we had a neighborhood friend, TR, they woke up, and my brother had tar dripping in his hair from the melting tar. And he thought he was on fire. So he ran out of the building, tripped over TR, who was sleeping on the floor. So he wakes up and was like, oh my God. And like, he ran out. I'm still sleeping. I'm like in a sleeping bag, and I'm dreaming that there's fire. I'm just dreaming. And it was like a fire retardant sleeping bag. So I'm not really burning yet. I'm just like getting hot. So TR, and this is, divine intervention. TR's father was a volunteer fireman. So TR knew the drill. So like, he ran out, and he's just kind of like, what should I do? What should I do? And so he realized, that he went back in. And by this time I'm standing in the flames, I don't know what's going on. I'm just standing there. And I hear somebody say, put your hands over your eyes, cover your mouth, don't breathe. And he threw me over his shoulder and like got me outside and threw me on the ground. And he started rolling me on the ground. And I still think I'm dreaming. I'm like, wow, this is a messed up dream.
Oh my God.
And I see little bits of fire on the grass where I've been rolling. And I'm not putting anything together. I'm in shock. And like, he's yelling at me going, stay here. And I'm like, all right, whatever. And like, I'm not feeling any pain or anything. I'm just in shock.
Right.
There's no pain, no nothing. I'm just like thinking I'm having a weird dream. And he goes up and like bang, 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 knocks on the door. The house was right there, like, 100 feet away. And my mom was like, who the hell's banging on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning? And my mom's boyfriend, Eric, looks out the window. He's like, oh my God. He saw the whole backyard was just lit up. And there was, by this time, the whole place was completely like 3-story high flame. And so they called the fire department. And I remember hearing the sirens coming. And I'm sitting and I had a dream. I know TR told me that he fell asleep and his friends thought it would be funny to drive down to the shore and then be like, oh, surprise, you're down at the shore now. And like, so don't ask me why, but that's stuck in my head. So I'm in a field and I think I'm on the beach. And I'm like, how did I get to the beach? Because I'm in this big field and I'm like groggy and out of it. And I thought it was sand. And all I could think was, how did they get a tree to grow in the sand? And I'm just staring at this tree in the middle of the field. And then I hear commotion and I know I'm looking at the tree and then I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm seeing like this massive fire behind me. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So I start coming out of it and getting a little coherent. And I touch myself to check myself. And what I felt was not good. I was like, oh God. And then I realized like there's a crispy stuck clothing to me and like this horrible, and all at once the pain hit me. And I was just like, all I could think was, I want my mommy. Like I thought I was down at the shore all alone. And I had this horrible sinking feeling of like, I'm going to die down here or whatever. And like, nobody's going to know where I am. And all of a sudden my mom magically appears. And I was like, am I okay? Am I okay? And she's like, yeah, you're fine. Just relax. And we had just gotten back from LBI in Jersey. We were down there for 2 weeks on vacation. I had a very deep, dark tan. I was one of those kids that just, got really brown in the sun. And, there was low lighting and my mom just thought that I was tan and she couldn't tell the extent of my burns. And she's like, yeah, you're fine. They were worried about my brother, and my brother panicked and like, he just took off. He thought he was burning. And then he realized that I can't get caught because they're going to be angry at me that the fort caught on fire. And like, so he just kind of was like, oh, what do I do? And he just like took off, and he didn't know I was still in there. And so like I ended up in an ambulance, and then like all this commotion going on. And they took me to Good Samaritan in Suffern, New York. And I remember seeing the lights going by in the gurney. And then I see the lights again. I'm going back out to the ambulance, and they were like, we can't do anything. We don't have a burn unit. He needs to go to Westchester, Valhalla. So, but I remember seeing the lights and then the lights again, and I was kind of in and out of it. They took me to Valhalla Burn Center, and I was there for like 6-7 months before they let me go home.
Wow. Back to when it first happened, you were in the sleeping bag, right?
Yeah.
So, and you were sleeping, but did you got pulled out in the sleeping bag still, or they got you out of the sleeping bag?
No, I think by that point I like probably was, I'd put my feet on the floor and the sleeping bag kind of fell down, and I was just standing there like, what's going on?
Yeah. Because I was wondering
Smoke inhalation. I think I was just a lot of smoke inhalation, and I was just kind of like still sleeping, and which is weird because I'm a very light sleeper, and for some reason, like maybe it was the smoke inhalation that I didn't come out of it,
Yeah. Oh my God. And then, so now you're in this hospital for months. And
Yeah.
what was the classification of the burns, like as far as degrees?
It was like 48%, and it was like right above my navel here, all the way up. And my whole lower half didn't get burned, strangely enough, because I was wearing jeans.
Oh,
And jeans are fire retardant. They just don't ignite very well.
right.
So that saved my lower half. And TR basically saved my life. Without him, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Yeah.
And my brother had all this guilt about it for many years in therapy and all that stuff about, I should have been there to save you, the older brother. And, so that was rough for him. And, my mom would say, like, you have the external scars. My brother has the internal scars. But it was crazy, man. And I'm lucky to be alive here talking with you today. And
Are you still in touch with TR?
yeah, I mean, he kind of faded, out of my life a little bit, but he would, we were friends for many years after that until everybody got, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and, kids, and he just kind of drifted his own way. But,
Yeah.
After I got out of the hospital, he was there a whole bunch and just hanging out and,
Right.
The whole town pulled together. It was in Mahwah, New Jersey, and the whole town just like really pulled together, and they started a trust fund for me. And they had this thing called Mahwah Night where the Lakers and the Nets played, against each other to raise money for me. And
what year was this?
this was 82.
82. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm giving away my age now.
It's all right.
But yeah, so it was just in a blink of an eye, my life completely changed.
Yeah, man. And when you're in the hospital, you're going through some kind of rehabilitation, I would imagine, right?
Oh yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
for a long period of time, what were they telling you as far as what you'd be able to do, what you wouldn't be able to do? Is there any talk of that stuff?
yeah, it was I mean, a lot of it was, just like preparing me for my new life with the way my hands are. And they basically, they didn't think I'd make it through the night. And the doctor was like, your son got burned really bad. We don't know if he has lung damage. We don't know if he's
Right.
blind. So all these specialists kept coming into my room, checking my lungs, checking my eyes. And I don't know if it was the drugs or whatever, but I kept saying, like, thanks, doc, when they left the room. Thank you.
Wow.
And they'd leave the room like, that's not a reaction from a 12-year-old. Usually it's like, get the F away from me and thank God you're leaving, and I was just like mellow and kind of resigned. And so they weren't sure, like they were a little scared that I wasn't going to survive. So, and, doctors like to cover their tail. And of course he was like, look, Mrs. LeVier, your son was burned really bad. I don't know if he's going to make it. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that he does. But that's what's up. My mom was just like, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah.
And she lived at the hospital every single day and night until they finally told her, go home. You're no good to your kid. If you got to take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No damage to the internal organs, right?
No, my lungs are rock solid, and my eyesight's
And your
20/20.
eyes, yeah,
And
man. So lucky, right? That your eyes are like fine.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
And but they didn't know for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
And
sure.
my mom and I got really close in the hospital, as did the whole family. And you know, so my mom would she was my lifeline. I would just like wait for my mom to come because she always had this very nurturing quality about her. And she actually worked in hospice for many years and helped people die peacefully. And she had really great bedside manners and relaxing voice. So I would just look forward to every time she came, and I would just wait for her to come. And so the nurses would be like, your mom just called, she'll be here in 30 minutes. And I would just perk up and so we're having a conversation, and my mom said, think healing thoughts. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like, what's a healing thought? She's like, I don't know. What makes you feel really good? So I was like, well, I want to play the drums. And I thought about like puppies and, all these cute things that would make me feel good and warm and fuzzy. And so my dad was in the room too, I think. And he said, all right, your birthday, when you get out, we're going to get you a brand new drum kit and you can play the drums, and we'll set them up here so you can look at them first. And, I had gone to see my dad play at the Orange County Fair up in Middletown, New York. And he was in a country Western band. And I was walking around, and then there was this rock band, And this guy had a massive double bass chrome Slingerland kit with like, all the toms and the lights, the way they hit them. I was just like, wow, that's what I want. I want that kit. So I just kept thinking of that chrome Slingerland kit. And my dad's like, we'll get it for you, when you get out. And so the nurse is in there changing my fluids or whatever. And my dad says goodnight and he's going out. And she said, Mr. LeVier, can I talk to you? And he's like, yeah, what's up? And she said, I know you're trying to make your son feel better, but let's not get stuff in his head that's going to disappoint him later on. His hands are burned extensively. He'll never play the drums. And I just don't think it's good to, do that to your son. It's not fair. And my father looked at her and he's like, you don't know my son. And he just walked away. And like, he didn't tell me that story till after he got me my first kit. He came through and kept his promise. And as I'm playing the kit, he's just like tearing up and bawling. And like, I couldn't hold the drumstick the way my hand is. Like I lost a lot of digits.
On both hands, right? I mean, it looks like one.
So yeah, this hand lost most of the, this thumb was added later and that's how I grip my stick. But I have half of my fingers that they're all there, but the skin is kind of grown. And the right hand is, I have limited mobility, but I have a really good grip on my right hand. And I never had a problem grabbing the stick with the right hand. It was just the left hand that I had to figure out, how am I going to hold the stick with the left hand? So the first thing was to try to whittle the stick down, like, in one spot near the fulcrum and stick it in this little digit here.
Right.
Which kind of worked, but it was very painful. And so then I was just like, screw it. Just give me some duct tape and give me a stick and put some padding under it and just duct tape it to my hand. So that was, I learned to like do the duct tape myself and, get it on there and like, pick up the stick with the right hand. Prior to that, I'd just been boom, boom, catch, just going and playing one hand. So when I got the gluing it, taping it to my hand, it was like a whole world opened up for me. And then I kind of did that for a while. And then one night I was in a parking lot and I saw this weird thing on the ground. I'm like, what's this? And I pick it up and it was like this kung fu glove, like a practice kung fu glove. Just this side was padded and the other side was open. And I threw it in my back seat of my car. I just started driving at the time. And then I was just kind of put it together. I'm like, oh, wait, that glove. And so I grabbed the glove and I duct taped the stick to the glove. So now I can like stick my hand in the glove, and so that worked. And it had a piece of Velcro on it that you could Velcro around your wrist so it wouldn't slide off. So that totally worked for me. And I started playing in bands and, this band I was telling you about that, was the impetus for me wanting to go to school. I was playing in rock bands and taking lessons. And so, but it didn't have any rebound, obviously.
Right.
And Keith Crane, the guy I was studying with at the time, is like, you seem like you're really interested in doing this for a career. And I think I was maybe having those conversations with him. He's like, why don't you get an operation so you could actually hold the stick? And I was like, oh, no. I was just deathly afraid of going back to the hospital at that point. I'd just been, poked and prodded and needles and just gone under anesthesia. And you come out of the anesthesia and you're just like, oh God, and you're throwing up. And it was just, I didn't want anything to do with that. So I was just like, no, I'm fine. And this works. And, and then I thought about it and I'm like, he's right. And I started having those conversations and I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm too afraid. I can't. And I was like, thought about it. And I was like, you know what? I got to do this. So I went to Boston Shriners. They have an amazing burn unit up there and they don't charge you anything for kids that have been in accidents. And the Shriners raise millions, if not billions of dollars to pay these doctors what they, these world-class doctors what they get, which is thousands of dollars per operation.
Right.
So I go up there and I talk to the main chief surgeon, and he said, "What can I do for you today?" Like, you go up there and there's a clinic where you meet the doctor and what do you want to have done and what's going on, and oh, you can't lift your arm, so maybe we should get rid of the scar tissue here or whatever. So I said, "Doc, I want a thumb. I want to be able to hold a drumstick." And he was like, "Wow." And he's like, "We don't get requests like that every day." He's like, "You got it, son." And he was like really stoked that I came in there and it was like, "I want a thumb, man. Give me a thumb." So it's funny. They gave me this Webb here, and Dr. Webb is the woman that performed the operation.
No shit.
So Dr. Webb gave me a Webb, and they pulled the thumb out of my hand here because, they just ace bandage, and it all just closes up, and the skin wants to close everything. So that's why my hand is.
It was in there. It was just grown over.
Yeah, it was all grown over.
Scar tissue.
And the thumb was in there, as are all my digits, not all of them, but from halfway the hand down, including my pinky, which is kind of like, it's all just kind of crushed in there.
Yeah.
So I got this operation and they had, pins coming out of here and there and there. And they did a graft in where they cut the thumb out. They did a skin graft, and I came home and then pins came out, and, it got tough to the point where I can hold a drumstick. And then, drumsticks, they're slippery, and when they're new. And so I'm like trying to hold a drumstick, and I'm like, oh, it's not working. It's not what I thought. And I got really depressed, and I'm just sitting there bouncing the stick with the left hand. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I can bounce it. And it had a fulcrum where I could bounce it, but I can't grab it. So I'm sitting there and I saw a rubber band sitting on the counter, and it just clicked. And I was like, whoa, what if I take the rubber band? Let's see if I got one here. So I see this rubber band, and I'm like, what if I take the rubber band and put it on the stick, grab the stick, and then put the rubber band on the back and around the stick again. So now it's on there like that. So now the stick is just, it moves around on its own, and it's got plenty of bounce and rebound if I don't grab it. Like, I'm not grabbing it right now, and you can see it's
right
moving around. But if I grab it, it just stops. And it's to the point now where, like, it feels so normal. Like, I don't know what it feels like. Like, if I had your hands for one day, I'd be like, but I don't know what that feels like anymore, because most of my life I've learned, the brain to muscle and nerve connection so well that this is completely normal for me. And so that's what happened. And then, in terms of the stick being slippery, it still was a weird feeling, like the stick would try to barrel roll around in there.
Yeah.
So I wore a wig for like a year or two, because I was like so conscious about being bald, and like most of my hair got burned off. So I wore a wig, and they give you this wig glue that's like a little container, and it's this super sticky glue. All right, I'm going to put this glue all over the stick, and the glue is like tacky, and the tackiness with the rubber band, it just worked like a charm.
Wow.
And I get this really positive, good reinforcement feeling when I'm playing. So if I do a rock gig, I just basically hold the stick back further.
Right.
If I'm not asked to do anything that requires chops. And if I'm doing a jazz gig, I don't need the rubber band, because I can hold it. And, you're putting sticks down and picking up a brush, and then, picking up the stick again. So I had to learn how to, put sticks down. And I learned that really quick in William Patterson. And then the other thing was, how do I get a side stick sound? So the way I came up with that is I basically, play traditional, and I rock my snare on an angle. So what I do is I put the butt end of the stick on the snare, and the stick hits the rim of the floor tom, and it gets a really cool sound that sounds just like a clave side stick vibe.
Oh shit, that's very cool.
Yeah, and that was the one thing I was like, wow, I can't do side stick because normally you're
Yeah.
playing like this, then you grab it like that, and you're doing that, with the side stick, and so that was my workaround for that, and that's what I do till this day, and nobody, unless they see what's happening, they can't tell that what I'm doing. And it's funny because a lot of drummers, like when I was playing the 55 bar, a lot of drummers would come up and they're like, I see what you're doing. That's wicked. Like, what a great idea. You're just playing off the floor tom with the,
Yeah.
like that. Like if this is the snare on my knee and that's the floor tom, that's what I do. It's just,
Now you got guys copying you to make that sound.
guys are sampling that all day and I'm making billions.
Oh man, but see how like, man, just the desire to play, the passion to play. There was nothing was
Yeah.
going to stop you anyway.
Right.
You know,
And that's,
whether they augmented your hand or not, you were going to play.
yeah,
one way or another.
there was no doubt. There was no doubt in my mind that how am I going to do this? There was no like, can I, will I? It was just like, nope, I'm doing that. And that was my mindset ever since I was a kid. I was very just, I'm doing that and I'm going to do it. And that's that. Nobody can talk me out of it.
Yeah, man. When you were
And
talking about the glove, it reminded me of like Dave Siegel. You know Dave, right?
yeah, very good friend of mine.
So he's got those gloves, man, that
He's
work for
amazing.
him. Yeah, it's incredible that, and he's able to do it,
Yep.
So pretty
And there's
amazing.
so many people that you see now with Instagram and everything, that guys with one arm, there's a girl that I think it's like right here and she has a apparatus she puts on and
Yeah.
they're all killing, and it's
And
like,
there's the kid, he's got sort of like a thumb here. Like the arms are very, very short.
yeah,
You know what I'm talking about? I can't remember his
yep.
name.
I forget his name, but I've seen him.
Yeah, he did that Foo Fighters cover of Everlong.
Right,
And
yeah.
he's like crushing it. And he's like, he
Crushing it.
barely has hands to hold anything. And you're like,
Yep.
see, I show my students, I'm like, I better not hear one freaking excuse from you about why you can't
Yeah.
practice.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and people say that a lot about me too. But it's just like, well, I'm glad I can do that for you. But the short of the story is, I had to. It's just like it was on my radar so strong. It was like no one can talk me down from that. And I just knew I was going to do it. And I've learned to kind of develop an inventor's mind.
Yeah.
And I've always been a creative kid. And like, growing up, we didn't have cable and phones and all that stuff. So like I was very hands-on, and if your bike broke in the middle of the woods, you had to figure out how to get out of the woods. And like, you're just inventive and creative. So like when it came time to hold the stick, I was just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this way with taping it, and then I'm going to get something better.
Yep.
And then, I got the operation, which was a complete game changer. And then developing and tweaking that.
I wonder if, did the doctors at Shriner, were they like, man, we don't know if this is going to work, but we'll see what happens when you heal?
Yeah, they just, they were like, well, he needs a thumb. Like without an opposable thumb, you can't really do anything. So like now I had this thumb, and God, it was just like a complete, difference and game changer. And it just, now that I had this thumb, I couldn't pick anything up with the left hand. Now I can pick things up, and like this thumb has gotten so strong, where I can like pick anything up, and even holding a piece of paper with your left. I mean, just things that I couldn't do that I could do now that you take for granted.
When you started to drive, was that before that was after the thumb, or was that?
No, that
before?
was way after. Yeah.
Yeah, it was way after. So you're able to use that for your driving, for gripping a steering wheel.
No, I actually drove before the thumb.
Oh, right, because you mentioned something about that before.
And that's another funny story. Like, I was talking to everybody, like, I can't wait to get my license. Like, I was dying to drive a car. Like, ever since I was a kid, my dad let me steer down the highway, and I was just like, I can't wait to drive. This is amazing. And it was just like, I was one of those kids that couldn't wait to drive. And so like, I kept saying to my mom, like, when I get my license, after my test, can I take your, and she's like, yeah, sure. Okay. But don't get your hopes up. She was
Yeah.
like she was like, I don't know if you're going to pass, and I went and I passed the first time. And,
Holy crap, that's awesome.
yeah. And I did it with a manual steering. My mom had a Chevette, wasn't even power steering. And guy was like, can you parallel park? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
And like get the button and then and get the front end.
Holy, wow, that's
So
amazing.
I was just so confident and sure that I was going to get my license that day and nothing was going to get in the way of that. And I had practiced and studied and read the book over and over. And, in high school they have driver ed and, so I was ready, man.
Perseverance, man. Holy
That's
moly.
it.
And I know
Perseverance is, that's my middle name. I mean, that's what you need to, for life. I mean, it's just like, I learned so many things at a very young age that most 12-year-olds don't have to think about, and
right.
Persistence and just, never giving up and just like, going for it and just being confident that you're going to do this and you got to follow through and you got to take one step at a time. And that's how I've gone about my career with drumming and practicing. And it's been very methodical with practicing, and it's helped my practicing. And the fact that I was supposed to die was just like, all right, I'm not dead. I can do anything. Like I didn't die.
Yeah.
Like it was very black and white.
Yeah,
So
man.
I was just like, I'm not dead. I can do anything I want,
Right.
and it was very clear. So can I play the drums? Of course. I'm not dead,
Yeah.
Can I learn to drive a car? I'm not dead. Of course I can, it's like, it was very very eye-opening and kind of freeing, your mindset in a lot of ways of what you want to accomplish in life. So that was kind of how I approach things.
Plus, right off the bat, I mean, you were kind of Rick Allen, doing the Rick Allen thing, right in the beginning,
Yeah,
and then pretty quickly figured out a way to make it work with the other hand, just through pure, will and innovation, right? Just getting innovative with it. I mean,
exactly.
before the thumb. I mean, so, it's just a testament to, your will to do it,
Yeah, and you talk about Rick. I mean, when I saw the documentary, like he's laying in the bed and the rest of the band members come in and they're like, so how you doing? And he's like, I got to figure it out, guys. I'm still your drummer, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, he's got one arm. Does he realize it?
Right.
He's like, no, I got to figure it out, and he had it all figured out with the MIDI on the left foot. And like, and the story that they hired another drummer and they expected him to do the whole tour. And literally 2 weeks to 1 month in, he's like, he doesn't need me.
Yeah.
I'm going home.
It's amazing. That's crazy.
And that's the power of drumming, man. That's the power of music. And, that's what I've brought into drumming for me. And that's what drumming has brought me to in my life, is that, it's such a powerful healing instrument that, can really just instill so many qualities outside of the instrument that maybe other instruments I don't think can. And the camaraderie of us drummers and
definitely,
it's very powerful. You don't see like, modern keyboard festival.
Dude, man, I say it every podcast. It's like, we're a different breed.
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, I always make the joke about bassoonist, but it's like there's no bassoon hangs. It's like,
Right.
PASIC for bassoon.
Yeah, man.
We should check the chat real quick.
Do it.
Usually I try to check it a little earlier, but man, your story is so incredible and inspiring, and there's a bunch of folks we're gonna say hello to. So first up, this is going back to the beginning, kind of. So Kevin Lehman was the first guy in. Kevin, right?
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely met him at PASIC, probably in the back. of Ballroom 500 hanging out. So he definitely talked with you at PASIC 2021. So we were all there together. Larry Rizzo hanging with us, saying, "Hey Jim, hey Ray." Favicki is here. Hey Ray.
What's happening, baby?
Fav, how's your mom, Fav? Hope you're doing all right. Joey Pinto from Staten Island hanging with us.
Joey.
I knew Joey would be in here. He almost blew his hand off with fireworks when he was a kid.
Oh man.
He was in the hospital. But yeah. Let's see. Adam said, "Oh, Lucia's here. Lucia, my young student Lucia hanging with us, saying hey."
Hey, Lucia.
Let's see who else. Everybody saying hello to each other. Beautiful.
Nice.
Oh yeah, Joey mentioned the firecrackers. He still has shrapnel in his hand.
Wow.
Let's see. Jim Royal hanging with us. What's up, Jim?
Hey, Jim.
Do you know Jim?
I wasn't he on your show?
He was on the show. Yeah, he's got a drum studio up in Connecticut.
Right.
Great drummer, percussionist, super talented guy. Great guy, really nice guy. Brian Dunn hanging with us. Yo, Brian, what's up?
Brian.
He said incredible story, killer player, definitely killer player.
Brian, you're a killer player.
Yeah, he is. When he was on the show, Jim Mola made a Facebook page called "Brian Dunn is a badass." So it's a Facebook page that he just created, you know. So it still exists, by the way. The Brian Dunn is a badass Facebook page. Steve Ford hanging with us. What's up, Steve? I know you got that Mac now. Nice. He said Ray's amazing. Joey popping back in, perseverance and passion. My great friend and close buddy bass player Rob Glick hanging with us. Loving your story. My mom is here. Hey, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
She bought me my first Red Sparkle Ludwig drum set. Nice.
Right.
Let's see. My mom saying hello to you, Lucia. And let's see. Oh, and Lucia saying this is such an important live stream. Indeed. Cool, man. We'll check back in with the chat in a few minutes.
Nice.
I wanted to ask you one thing though. Like during all that time, were there periods of darkness and frustration, or was it like you just stayed tunnel vision, like on the goal?
Yes and yes. Tunnel vision all the way. Like I'm doing this, I'm practicing 8 to 12 hours a day. And like, because when I started, I really didn't start till 16. Right. I really didn't practice. I didn't take lessons at 16, I took 2 lessons from Sal, and I just thought I'd be playing rock beats and, didn't really take it seriously until I graduated high school. And once I realized I wanted to do this, like, I was like, oh man, I got a lot of catch up to do. And so I literally practiced 8 to 12 hours a day for a good 2-3 year period, 5 to 6 days a week.
Wow.
And it was very methodical. And my mom would literally bring my food down to my drum kit. And like, I was studying with Sal LaRocca. We were in like so many different books and, play along CDs and stuff like that. And so I got a lot of stuff together in a short amount of time. And, when you're young, you have a lot of brain plasticity. So I took advantage of all that to just, I didn't want a girlfriend. I just wanted drums, man. I just wanted to play the drums, and that was my time to get it together. And, but yeah, it was, when you're younger, I think you don't think too much outside of the box, and you don't think about my life, it's right. Just all, I'm doing this now, and I'm doing it. And then when you get older, it's like you start, it's like when you get better, things open up, and it's like a V, the road just gets wider and wider and wider. And you realize like, oh boy, there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of styles. There's a lot of, everything. And
yeah. So,
but when you start younger, you tend to, you don't think of all that. So I think it can help you. But yeah, man, it's a daily basis, day at a time of just like, what I call the check up from the neck up, man. You have to like check
Yeah.
in and be like, how am I doing today? And like, I've always been into like healing modalities and like positive thinking and positive reinforcement and thinking healing thoughts and, just trying to empower yourself, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And so, yeah, that's something that has been kind of a life preserver for me to not sink and, drowned in the sea of, depression or misery or whatever you want.
Yeah,
There's
man.
so much going on out there, and especially today after the pandemic, there's a lot of depression and,
Yeah.
people that just can't get out, they can't get out of the hole, and like, they don't have the tools, and it's really important to have the tools to, like adjust your brain. And there's so much information out there that's really helped a lot of people. One of the people I really latched onto was Dr. Huberman's lab podcast, and he's a brain scientist, a neuroscientist, and he talks about all these great things. And one of them is, and I'm in the process of trying to get this into a book. And it's going to be, talking about the brain and how to learn skills faster and breathing modalities and how breathing and meditation leads to flow. And it's like, everybody wants to know, how do I get into a flow state? How do I shut my mind up and be in the game 100% and be like really aware of what's happening on the bandstand or the field if you're playing baseball or whatever. And so there's a lot of different breathing modalities, which I'd like to eventually put into a book. And so I'm always looking for information to help me. And so there's, box breathing, for instance, is one where, and the Navy SEALs use this. And there was a guy that wrote a book about breathing that I read, and I can't remember the author's name, but he said he was on a helicopter with all these Navy SEALs and they were just about to drop into a red zone or whatever. And he said, "What are you guys thinking?" And he said, "We're all box breathing. We're just, and box breathing is 4 counts in, hold the in count for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, and hold the out breath for 4 counts." So when you do that, you don't have time to think.
Right.
Your mind doesn't wander because you're stuck in counting in, hold for 4, So I do that a lot when I practice and when I warm up. It's a great way to trick yourself into focus.
Yeah.
And once you trick the mind into focus, you can get into a flow state. And it takes practice like everything else. It just doesn't happen easy, especially for me, because I'm a very thinkity type of guy. And so I try to use everything I can to help me ground myself and to quiet the mind. And meditation is something I've always kind of dabbled in, but now it's like something I make myself do every morning and night. And even if you don't think meditation is working, like it works profoundly, even if you don't think it's working. I know you're into meditating and
Yeah, I'm
stuff
heavy
like
into
that.
it. I mean, the same thing. It's, I do it every morning, no matter what, and then I do a little afternoon session, short, and a little evening session. But
Beautiful.
in the morning, it's religiously an hour of mindfulness training
Mm.
every
Yeah,
day, and it's changed my life totally.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And you realize after you do it for a while that you're nothing more than your mind. Your mind is what controls your life.
yeah,
And if you can become the master of your mind, you become the master of your life. And if you can quiet down, if you can learn how to quiet the mind, like a lot of people are afraid to quiet the mind. A lot of people are afraid to turn the TV off because, oh, it's too quiet, the
yeah, yeah,
silence, deafening. And I get it, but it's important if you want to have any sense of focus and stick to itiveness with something, and especially drums. I mean, playing an instrument is nothing more than meditating. You're focusing one pointedly on one thing for, 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time without your mind, drifting here or there. And we've all been on gigs where you're in the zone and all of a sudden somebody walks in and you're like, oh, it's Antonio Sanchez or whatever. And you're like, all right, I got a job to do here. Like, forget that. Let's go back to this, and it's like, but that's Antonio. And you're like, forget that. Let's go. But that's, and your mind is like doing this thing. And it's like, but after a while, you just, it's like, so what? He's a human being like me, and he's got his life and his journey, and you can't compare apples to oranges, and we're all different. And like,
that's it.
You got to talk yourself back from the ledge, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, that. What's funny is, the whole premise behind meditation, and when you hear people say, "Oh man, I don't meditate. I'm no good at meditation, so I don't do it," because they think that because their mind wandered, and they had to bring it back to their breathing, over and over and over, that they're bad at meditating. But it's like,
right.
I have news for you. Everybody's not good at it,
That's
especially in the beginning. It's all part of the process. I mean, it is the
process is bringing it back.
Yeah. And it's sort of like,
we all,
yeah. And it's sort of, the periods of disconnect get smaller, but you're always gonna always have that correction. It's think about this, like somebody that when they first start working with a metronome, their time is pretty bad. They have to make big swings and big adjustments. And the more you work with a metronome, the adjustments become inaudible. Where it's just, you're constantly adjusting because we're human beings. Benny Greb said it, great in his one of his videos. I forget now, but he was talking about how, like, he's still adjusting his time. You just don't hear it because it's so minute.
Micro.
Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, that's really what meditation and like you said, playing drums, man.
Yeah.
It is a meditative state. So
it is. It really is. You're in the zone, and everybody's trying to get to the zone. And it's, the zone is nothing more than not thinking. And then when you're not thinking, you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
And being mindful, as you know, Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about mindfulness. And it really is just thinking about, where is my mind? Where am I?
Yeah.
Where am I now? Okay, where am I now? Oh, I lost myself. Let's bring it back. Okay, I'm back. Oh, I just lost it again. Let's bring it back. And that's the mindfulness. And, it's like lifting weights. You go to the gym, and after a while, you're like, I'm getting strong, getting good at this, and it's like, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's bringing it back. And that's like what meditation does, I think, is it helps you just become aware, become mindful that I'm not here right now. I'm lost. I'm over there.
Yeah.
And how many people go through their whole life and they don't even realize they're over there?
Yeah.
They have little glimpses and they're like, oh, maybe I should, whatever. But, I have friends that are just, they're all over the place, and like, they can't sit still. They can't focus. They can't stop the mind.
Right.
And, my ex-girlfriend, she used to say, what are you thinking about right now? I'm like, nothing.
Yeah, I know.
What do you mean nothing? Like, I turned it off. I'm trying not to think, that's my goal, is to like turn off the mechanism.
Yeah.
And a funny story about a metronome. I'm studying with Keith Crane, and he's like, you need to, if you're going to be a musician, you got to learn to play with a click track. I'm like, what's a click track? He's like, it's a metronome. And he's like, you got a metronome? And I was like, no, I don't. And he's like, well, get one. So I got the little metronome, and it's got the 9-volt battery, and I stick it in. It's got the little jack, and I plug it into my PA, and he sets it on 60 or 70 or whatever. And he's like, all right, play a single stroke roll of 16th notes to this. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, I'm like, I think the metronome needs a new battery.
Yeah, man.
He's laughing, and he's like, no, you need a new battery. He's like, nothing wrong with the metronome. He's like, you got horrible time, bro. He's like, you got to work on your time.
Yeah.
That's what we do as drummers. We get, we're all about laying down solid time. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I knew nothing, I was just, but once I learned that, I was like, all right, my time is going to be awesome. I'm going to work on this, you know. And he came back next week and he was like, great job. It sounds much better. And then first time I was in a studio, you know, and playing along with a click track, I was just like, oh no, you know, because it's like, now you got to play the kit and think about the tune and think about the sections and, you know, and like I could play with a click, but it sounded very stiff. And took a while to relax into it, you know, and I kept at it and kept practicing. And eventually, you know, my teacher was like, learn to play on top of it, learn to play right on it, learn to play behind it, you know. And he was, Steve Teray was one of our instructors at William Patterson.
Wow.
And he said, he's like, all right, here's funk. Now that's the blues.
Nice.
And now here's the jazz.
That's great.
You know, and it's just, I'm not moving. I'm just tipping.
Yeah.
Tipping back, or I'm tipping forward, you know? And when he did that, I was like, oh, you know, it was like, couldn't have been a better example of a visual, you know?
Wow, that's very cool. By the way, Steve Teray did that record with the seashells.
Oh man, yeah.
Holy smokes. That just reminded
Crazy.
me of that. Crazy, right? Really good.
Yeah, he brought a conch shell in one time to William Patterson. I'm like, what's this guy doing with his shell? And he starts playing it, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know the story, but however he started playing those, it was really pretty profound.
Yeah, I'm glad he did.
I'm glad he did. By the way, you and I both studied with Kim Plainfield. Rest in peace, Kim.
Oh man, Kim.
What a great guy, man. What a great teacher. I remember, you know, you kind of auditioned for a lesson in a way. Like the first lesson, we went in one of the bigger rooms at the collective.
The double drum room.
Yeah, the double drum room. And we played together.
Yeah.
And I remember him like, you know, I didn't know what to expect. And I was just like, I don't know, I'm just going to throw down some things that I know. And I happened to do something that was kind of cross rhythmic and I was messing with the time, and it caught his attention, and he's like smiling and looking over, and I just remember that moment, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be fun. And then he proceeded to beat the crap out of me for like the next year, of course, but it was super fun. And speaking of playing piano in the lessons, you know, he would play
piano
keyboards.
too.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Kim was like one of the teachers that is just, I can't even put it into words. I'm going to cry if I
know.
Like, I saw his book at Sam Ash and I was like, wow, this book looks amazing. And like, I bought the book, and then I find out he's actually teaching at the, you know, collective.
Right.
And I was in school and I was studying with John, and I think I just graduated or something. And so I went to him, and he's the first lesson, and he was like, man, he's like, John Riley has nothing but good things to say about you. And
wow.
That was like the first thing out of his mouth. And I was like, oh, well, that's good to know. And he was just really cool. And like, we went through his book, and I still go through his book. There's that one section where he adds up numbers like 3, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5, and 2 4s makes up 32. And so like, once I wrapped my head around that, it was like the over the bar line thing was like what I was going for at the time, and like trying to listen, like how to play over the bar line and not get so caught up in the grid and not lose your space when you're trying to stretch. And so that was that was a great tool for me. And then there's so many applications that you can use with that formula, all the way from just your hands to linear phrasing to, you know, doubles. It's like the 3s, if you play a single and 2 doubles, you get a 5-stroke roll.
Yeah.
And then the 5-note groupings turn into a 9-stroke roll, and the 4 groupings turn into a 7-stroke roll. So I do that a lot to warm up. And
that whole idea basically spawned my whole hand technique workshop booklet, which now is 100 pages. Of just routines based on that idea of mixing, you know, groupings. Mm-hmm. It's really incredible. And you know what's amazing is when I studied with him, his book wasn't out yet, so he was writing it down He would give me photocopies sometimes, but most of the time he was writing it down each time.
Wow.
And I still have all those pages of handwritten stuff
Wow.
before his book came out. Yeah.
And that was the same thing with Riley's book, the Beyond Bob book, or
Yeah.
whatever the first one was. I think it was Beyond Bob. His book wasn't out yet, and he was writing all these ideas down, and a lot of them were based off the Ted Reed syncopation book. And like, so he was the guy that Riley really turned me on to, like how you can go through exercise 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, whatever, and use these concepts of filling in the holes. So I've come up with all these concepts, and like I'm threatening to write a book myself, and hopefully within this year, next year, I'll have most of it done.
Nice.
I'm trying to mix that with the breathing modalities and talking about empowering yourself through meditation to get to flow and quieting the mind, and nutrition, and mixed with a whole bunch of like, positive affirmations and stories, Zen stories. And I don't know if you know Shunryu Suzuki's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Yeah.
Anybody listening that doesn't have that book, if you're a musician, you need to have that book, because he talks about Zazen, but Zazen you can flip for drumming, and everything in there is like, when I found that book, I was just like blown. I read it over and over and over. I've read it probably 30 times. It's a pretty short book, and it's very Zen out there. And he talks about, if you walk 1 mile to the east, you must walk 1 mile to the west. And, it's like, if you're willing to go this way, why would your mind not want to go that way? And like,
right.
And he talks about like, if you become obsessed with Buddhism or any type of thing, he's like, you may not be so happy because you're still stuck in a modality. And it's what they call the golden chain of righteousness, where it's still got you, you're still hung, even though it's a golden chain, you're still not free.
Yeah.
And there's all these concepts they're really awesome. And one of the things that I really latched onto was the 4 horses. And he talks about the first horse, the first cart horse turns when it sees the shadow of the whip. The second horse turns when it hears the crack of the whip. The third horse turns when it feels the crack of the whip on its skin. And the fourth one turns when you crack the crap out of it, like it needs to go whack, whack, and then it finally turns. And he said, of course, we all want to be the best horse, don't we? But he said, think about the fourth horse and how much compassion the Buddha would have for the fourth horse. And my takeaway from that was like, yes, but also like you internalize something on a very deep, visceral level. And like, I was not an easy study, and I didn't get things quick. And I would like clamp up my mind and be like, I either get it or I don't, and it's like, I wouldn't get it until I got it. And then I'd be like, oh, I got it now, and then it would be like the water's cut off. And all of a sudden, once the water flows, it's like, okay, I get it,
right.
But it was either on or off, so like when I heard that story, I was like, I'm the fourth horse. Like I'm the one that like really has internalized it, because it was so hard for me. And, that whole thing of not everybody can be a musician, I related it to that, because if you're the best horse, it's easy for you. Like I had drummer friends in high school. There was this one kid that could play the mess out of the drums. He was studying, and he was maybe 12 or 13, and he had all these Buddy Rich chops and all this stuff. And I didn't know a lick of anything. And I would just sit there and look at this kid like he's a genius.
Wow.
And then like we're graduating high school, and I'm like, so you're going to go on and be a professional drummer, and you're going to be like, the new next Buddy Rich? And he's like, no, I'm going to be a doctor. I don't want to really play that. And I was like, no, you can't do that. What do you mean? It was like, it blew my mind. It blew my mind that he didn't want to play the drums with that amount of talent. But it wasn't in his wheelhouse. He was like, it was easy for him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't like, so for me, it was such a hard to reach thing that I was like, it's right there and I can almost grab it, and it was always painful and always like, and then when I finally got it, I was like, I got it, and it was just like this amazing momentous thing. And I really internalized it. It was like cracking the whip and like, it was like, ow, and you finally get it. And like, you own it. And you're like, I own this. No one can take this from me, And it's like, as opposed to the kid that's like, it was easy. I don't know. I didn't
Yeah,
give
yeah.
much thought,
Yeah. Oh my God. I think
So,
sometimes, you appreciate it more and when you have to work for it and when the journey has those hills and valleys in it, you
yeah.
you learn something about yourself.
Isn't that true with anything? Because like if you're a kid from a rich parent and they just here's a Land Rover for your birthday and
Yeah, yeah.
we'll get you an apartment for when you go to college and here's your allowance. Like they don't have to work for anything. It doesn't mean anything to you.
Right.
But if like you had to work your ass off from day one and you realized like how hard it was to make money, or maybe you worked in ditch, maybe you worked on houses, maybe it was something that was god awful, like cleaning up poop or something. Like,
Right.
you value that. When you get that dollar, you're like, that's poop money. You know what I mean?
That's so true. Oh my
It
God.
means a lot more, So that was my story. It was just and when I was studying with Sal, he had this dog, Sparky, this little white dog that used to sleep under the floor, Tom, during the lessons. And he always used to joke. He's like, yeah, you got a long way to go, kid. He's like, Sparky's got more talent in his left paw.
That's great. But see, that's a great way to, keep it positive, but push you.
Yeah.
That's
And that
great.
was why I stuck it out with Sal. I mean, I have to say that Sal LaRocca is really, John was an amazing teacher, and, Kim and Horace Arnold. And I studied with Jojo Mayer, and I studied with Tommy Campbell, and I studied with Lenny White and all these great guys. But Sal was the one guy that I was so impressionable at that time.
Right.
And I was so like afraid of him, not afraid, but it was just like, oh, I want to do right by this guy,
Right. You didn't want to disappoint him.
Yeah, I didn't want to disappoint him. And he was a guy that he didn't give compliments. He just didn't.
Yeah.
So the first time I got a compliment from him, I was like, oh my God. It was like, he's like, yeah, it sounds good. Keep it up. And then he
Wow.
would start saying stuff like that, hey, yeah, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. I'm more chick on the hi-hat and a little more emphasis on the 2 and 4 on the cymbal. And, he
Wow.
would just, and I bring like recordings in of drummers that I thought were amazing. And I was like waiting to see like him to be like, wow. And he'd be like, hey, he's doing the gig, it's all right. He can inflect on the 2 and 4 a little more, you'd always nitpick something. He's rushing, he's dragging, his time's not so great. He's playing too much here. He always had something to say.
He's a Russian dragon.
The Russian Dragon, remember that?
Yeah, you ever hear that? Oh man. By the
So,
way, I just wanted to mention that Peter Retzlaff is hanging with us. He's on a break at a gig. So, do you know Peter?
I don't know if I know. I'm horrible with names. So, Peter, if I do know you when we met, I'm sorry.
Giant Baby Steps to Giant Steps is his book, which is a great straight ahead jazz play along and jazz independence book. And he was faculty at Drummers Collective for a time. So yeah, great, and
I'm
a
sure
great
we
guy.
bumped into each other.
And he's been on my show.
Right on. I'm going to check out the interview.
And John Gill from Oneonta, New York, hanging with us.
All right.
Yeah, man. Cool. Yeah. So the other thing you mentioned is that you studied with Jojo, and my Jojo story, which is pretty short, is I met Jojo I'd seen him play, but I met him at Joe Morello's funeral.
Oh, wow.
And so we rode together. It was bananas. It was me, Dom Famularo, Dom was driving, and Stanton Moore and Jojo Mayer going to Morello's funeral together. Wow. So we did the pickups in Manhattan. We all rode together and we went up. And so I got to talk to Jojo, and then I mentioned to him he was working on his Secret Weapons 2, the foot pedal DVD. And I was like, hey, man, this band leader that I used to work for has an incredible collection of instruments. His name is Vince Giordano. He lives in Brooklyn. He's in all these movies. He's a band leader. He's great. He's got all these old bass drums and like snowshoe hi-hats and all this stuff. And he was like, oh man, I'd love to look at that stuff, because he was researching things for his DVD. And I was like, cool, man, I'll pick you up. We'll go up there and we'll go hang out. So, we met. He had a studio in Queens at the time. So we met in Brooklyn. I picked him up. We went to a bakery. We got some stuff, got some coffee, went over to Vince's house, watched some videos that Vince had, some films, and looked at a bunch of bass drum pedals and all this stuff. And then we went out for burritos, and then I dropped him back at his studio in Queens. And so that was my hang with him. And it was super fun. And I was like, man, I would love to study with you. And he's like, oh, I'm really not teaching at this time. But he goes, but I'll throw you a bone. And, he would do a lesson. And then like a year later, his DVD came out. And I was like telling Dom the story, Dom Famularo, which Dom, how you doing, Dom? If you're watching, we're thinking about you, buddy. We
love you, Dom.
He goes, yeah. He goes, I said, his Foot DVD came out. And he's like, yeah. He goes, you're in the credits. I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. He put you in the credits. I was like, no. I was like, that's ridiculous. So I look at the credits, and sure enough, he's thanking me in the credits. So anyway, that was my little thing with him. But you got to study with him, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I study. I mean, I took a couple lessons from him, and I used to go follow him everywhere. He was playing with the Screaming Headless Torsos.
Yeah.
And that band blew my mind, and he was playing all this Vinny stuff, and I was just like, wow. And the album wasn't even out yet. They were just bouncing all over Manhattan. And they would double bill with Lost Tribe with Ben Porowski playing drums.
Wow.
And Dave Binney sax, and Dave, man, I can't think of who else was in the band. I'm spacing, but David Gilmour was on guitar, and the other guitarist, I forgot his name, and Fema Ephron was playing bass.
Nice.
But I used to follow these guys around and just get my mind blown. There was a place called The Cooler in Manhattan, and they used to play there a lot. And so I'm like, do you teach? And, I think he just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Stop by the studio. So they had a studio down on Rivington Street, and Tommy Campbell was practicing there, and Ben Porowski and Jojo, and like all the badass drummers that, that's where they went to rehearse.
Wow.
So I remember the kit was just like the crash cymbal didn't have a top on it. So it was a stick jammed into and then the cymbal on top of the stick that was like chewing away at the tip of the stick and almost ready to fall off. And so I'm like, Jojo, show me all that stuff. And Jojo was like, man, Zigaboo, plays so simple. And he just starts laying down the simple groove. And he's like, starts playing ghost notes. He's like, no, screw it. No ghost notes. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, show me that stuff, and like, so like the lesson was, I was expecting to get, a whole bunch of fusion chops, but, it was very enlightening because he was like, you got to be able to play simple. And, so that was what I got out of the lesson from Jojo.
Wow, man.
Of all people.
What's amazing? Like, depending, like that, you have expectation, right? So like I took a couple lessons with Victor Lewis, and I didn't know what to expect, but it was basically quarter notes.
Yeah.
For like an entire hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I studied with Kenwood Denard for a while.
Yeah.
And the first lesson was him going, tut, 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 tut. Just bouncing the stick and just like getting into this Zen thing of just
right.
And that was like most of the lesson. I was like, really? I was like almost disappointed. I was like, nah, show me, you're a young kid and you're just like chomping at the bit. You want to like get all that stuff. But, I had some heavy lessons with Kenwood. He was just really great. And then Kenwood played the Modern Drummer Festival in '95. And he put together like this kind of street beat percussion thing. And I played bass drum.
Oh, wow.
Bass drum around my neck and, was my Yamaha recording custom 20-inch bass drum that I found a strap somewhere and put it around my neck, and it was cool. So we laid down this groove for him to solo over, and we had rehearsals at his studio in Manhattan, and
it's
it
killer.
was really cool.
Wow, that's very cool,
And
man.
yeah, so that was and Kenwood is just such a beautiful soul, and
Yeah, man.
just
I never had the opportunity to study with him, or I never created an opportunity to study with him. But my buddy Dave Clive, who's in this chat once in a while, he was on the show doing vintage drum night. He studied with Kenwood for a while. Has great stories about him. Always, anybody who speaks of him always speaks of what a beautiful person he is.
his energy was just so just positive and uplifting, and he was always like trying to. I remember during the lesson, he was like him, and he had like 3 or 4 other people that were living in the apartment, and he's like, we're all doing. They were doing like this monster long practice thing where like you practice, you get up, you practice all day until you're falling over, and you go to sleep, and you get up and you start practicing again. And they were doing this for weeks at a time. And I forgot what he called it, but it was like this 24-hour practicing thing where they were just all like, and that was something that was like actually one of the things that wanted me. I was like, wow, these guys are practicing all day. Why can't I do 6 to 12 hours a day? So that's like, I went home, and that's how I was like, made myself, because it just seemed like 6 hours after these guys practicing, almost 24 hours, they would sleep like 5 hours and get back up and go right back in the practice room.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And, and then they pray and meditate and chant, and then they go back in and practice, and then eat something and back in, and,
Wow.
but that's the level of, that, you can take it to, and it's just, I mean, I only like really, I love to practice. That was one of the things that I learned to love practicing, the process of learning something. A lot of people don't like to practice, and they're like, I can't stand to practice. But like, I love practicing just as much as doing live gigs, just as much as doing studio work.
Right.
And like,
that's its own, part of this. I mean, it's like not everybody's got that desire.
yeah.
And
And
I think, what cultivates all of this love of the instrument is the ability to sit there and still get in the zone and create and get in touch with the kid that saw those drums for the first time. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
the childhood, like you can't ever leave the playground, so to speak. You have to remain that child. And like, I was just watching some of your episodes, and Dave Weckl was talking about like, I'm still the kid that geeks out on, whatever. And I remember hearing Dave Garibaldi talking about when he wasn't working, he was practicing.
yeah.
Whenever he wasn't gigging, he was practicing.
Yeah, man.
And I read that in Modern Drummer, and I was like, okay, well, that's me.
Yeah.
And it was like, all these things that I heard from pro drummers that just stuck into my head. And Doug Yowell is a good friend of mine, and he was working at Sam Ash way long time ago, and he was studying with Peter Erskine, and he said something that Peter said to him that like stuck with me. And he's like, talking about bringing your kit, really close together. And it's like, you have to think of yourself like a pilot in a cockpit, in an emergency situation. You don't want to have to reach up and grab something, it should all be right there. So I was like, oh, I got to bring my kit tighter. Cause I was like, my cymbals were up there like Tommy Lee watching MTV videos, and all this wasted energy of like trying to hit a cymbal way out there. And like, so I like compacted everything back. And the other thing he said, he was like, Peter said that, the hi-hat is, that's the timekeeper. And like, I heard that at the right time, and I was like, oh yeah, the hi-hat's the timekeeper. And, and like,
yeah. Isn't it amazing? Like the things that's, that stick. By the way, we should say hello real quick. My childhood friend, Lowell Wilson, Lowell, what's up, man? Guitar player that I know from childhood hanging with us tonight. Stacy Keenan's hanging with us. Bobby Deitch in the house.
Hey, Bobby.
Deitch! He says the Deitch family loves Ray. Awesome,
I love those
man.
guys. I mean, talk about, oh man, Adam's playing. Like when I first heard Adam play,
Oh my God.
when I really heard him play, it was on the SCO recording,
Right.
and I like wore the grooves on my CD player out on that. I just like, you know, couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. There was one tune where he was just like on the hi-hat, and it was like things that, like once you hear it, you're like, wow, how come I didn't think of that? Like that's such a simple, cool thing that he was doing, and like, little things that you just get, and it's like,
Yeah, man.
Adam is like one of my guys that like I tried to steal everything I could from him, but his feel was what I was trying to cop mostly. His feel, which he learned from you, Bobby.
Yeah, man.
And so the feel was something I really got from Adam. His feel is just incredible, and
Plus, his mom's a great drummer.
yeah, Denise. Geez, I mean,
Yeah,
both.
she can
It's
play.
like, what's it like to grow up with both your parents killing drummers? And I'm so glad I tuned in for your episode with him. It was really great to hear his story and to hear Bobby and Denise, what their story and
That was
and
a
how
super fun episode, just having the whole family on the Zoom call.
yeah,
You know,
that was really cool.
that was killer.
Anyway, shout out to you guys.
Yeah,
The
man, we
Deitch
love you
people.
guys. By the way, my buddy John DeBow hanging with us. I don't know if you know Chet DeBow, but
Yeah.
so John DeBow is Chet's nephew,
Oh, right on.
and John is one of my childhood friends. And John and his brother Lou had a Ludwig Vistalite drum set in their basement because their dad's a band leader, and so the first drum set that I got in contact with was John and Lou DeBow's mixed color Ludwig Vistalite. It was like red tom tom, a blue snare, blue bass drum, and a red floor tom Vistalites. And they
Wow.
had that down in the basement. And their uncle Chet ran up my first gig. With those guys, I must have been 11 or 12. We played a nursing home. And so in steeped deep with the DeBow family. So glad John's here. And by the way, John DeBow's got this very cool Meatloaf cover thing that's like out of this world, like spot on. He's Meatloaf, and they crush it. It's really killing.
Cool.
So yeah, very very cool.
Yeah.
And
Chet's
Lowell, yeah.
funk samba, man.
Yeah, man, I got all my Chet books over on the rack to my left. The funk samba one's great. He's got the shuffle book, and then he's got that funk drumming workbook, which was driving me nuts when I was a kid trying to play those linear patterns. I remember just going super slow, like 40 beats per minute. Doom, ga, doom, ga, ga, and just like going super slow until I would get that stuff. So thanks for hanging, John. Say hello to your uncle. Well, I'll say hello to Chet on Facebook.
Yeah.
He's going to
Cool.
Canada tomorrow. Have a good trip. Cool, man. Wow, what a very, very cool hang. Well, you know what I want to do? I want to do my little speed round questions with you. By the way, just before I do that, you're a Pisces endorser?
Yes, sir.
Ah, very cool. Pisces in the house. So, I'm a Sabian guy, but definitely love me some old Pisces symbols, and I did have some throughout my days. I will tell you that at one point, very long time ago, I had a black Yamaha kit before I became like a Tama guy, and I was on a black Yamaha kit with black color sound symbols. Remember the black symbols?
Yeah,
that
man.
They put out like
Yep.
red and black symbols. So I had all these black Pisces crashes on my kit because they looked really cool. And
Yep.
so
I had
like,
the black ride at one point. Yeah.
oh, did you? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any other companies we should shout out to?
Shout out to Peisty. Thank you to the Peisty family and Yamaha, of course.
Yep.
I couldn't love my Yamahas any more than I do playing the absolute maple hybrids that are amazing sounding.
Nice.
And Vader sticks.
Vader.
Yeah.
What model do you play?
I'm playing the Fusion Acorn tip.
Yeah, those are nice.
They're a really great stick, and it's a really great go-to stick for basically any style. I use them for swing. I use them for funk, rock. It's just my one and only stick.
So lately, I've been using these ball tip, cymbal ball
Yeah, the
tips.
ball tips are great.
Yeah, really great
I was using
stick
those
definition.
for the longest time, and then when the Acorn tip came out, I started with those, and I just kind of fell in love with the Acorn tip.
Yeah, yeah. I got where's my I have a Keg 5A with an Acorn tip over by the drum kit. Yeah, yeah. Great sticks.
And I was playing the Manhattan 7As for a long time. I was really liking those.
Yeah.
And then the Fusion Sugar Maple, I was playing for a while. They're a little bit lighter wood.
Yeah, those are
And
nice.
it's weird, you pick up a stick and like, wow, that's heavy. I could never, and then you do one practice session and all of a sudden you're like, this feels great in my hand. It happens that fast. So like the Sugar Maples felt lighter and I could feel like I could move around the kit a little easier. And then I picked up the Fusion Acorns and then I went back to the Sugar Maples. I'm like, these are too light. I'm like, I can't, there's no meat,
Yeah.
So it's funny how things change so quick for you.
I have Dom's pad stick, by the way, right here, which Vader started making for him, and these are sugar maple, and these have those. It's almost like a old Wanamaker, kind of shaft, but it's got these amazing big tips for pad work. So I use these for pad stuff. Really fun.
Right on.
Yeah, yeah. Goes nice with my ProLogix pads.
There you go. Shout out to ProLogic.
Shout out to ProLogix and Vader for sure. Any other companies we need to mention?
Oh, Evans. Sorry. I mean, Steve Lobmeyer at Evans. I love that guy. He's been nothing but gracious and awesome to me. And
Steve's a great guy.
Really is. He's such a sweet cat. Rick Drum, who you had on your show, that was a great episode.
Yeah, man.
I met Rick Drum at Drummers Collective. There was a Yamaha thing there. They were Yamaha was there doing their thing, and a whole bunch of Yamaha artists were there, and that's where I met Rick Drum. And he's like, "Hey, man, nice to meet you." Blah blah blah. He's like, "Here's my car. Give me a call and come down to the factory." And I was like, "Really?" So I called him up and went down to the factory, and he took me all over the factory, not just the drum department, but the string department.
Yeah.
And
isn't that amazing?
showed me, crazy, man. Showed me how, and he's like, I'm taking photos with my phone. He's like, all right, now you can't take photos over here because this is top secret stuff. I'm like, okay, I won't take photos. So like, the process of how they make the heads and stuff, they don't want the competitors to know or whatever.
Yeah.
But he took me through the string shop and all the way they wound the strings. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
And then we went out to lunch, and like he insisted, that I don't pay, and like it was just, he couldn't have been a more sweet cat, And
Rick Drum's one of the best in the whole industry, man.
Yes, he's just such a great dude.
Yeah.
Such a great, sweet guy.
I remember him showing me those when ProMark was starting to do the forward and rebound sticks. So that was Rick Drum's brainchild of like putting the balance in different select balance,
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool, like hanging in his office, and he was showing me the prototype sticks,
Amazing. Yeah, he's not only is he a nice guy, he's brilliant. He's got a
Smart.
genius mind and a really incredible inventor mind, and his business modality is just, he really he's like on the top of his game and what he knows, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, 100%. If anybody missed that episode with Rick Drum, it's archived up on YouTube. Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
By the way, Lowell, my buddy from childhood, just said that he's seen my post for the live stream, and this is the first time he's jumping in. So thanks for doing that. And then John DeBoe chimed in and said he needs a chocodile, which is a very long story, which I'm not going to tell right now. But there's a story behind the comment, "I need a chocodile," which we won't get into right now. But it's a funny story. All right, cool. So I'm going to do some of these speed round ones. So, okay, are we ready? So, and some of these you already answered, so I'm going to skip some of them. But first record that you ever bought?
Glass Houses by Billy Joel.
Wow, nice.
Yep, that was my first. It was actually a cassette. It wasn't an album. It was. I remember going to the store, and I forgot the hit that was on there, but I was like, I got to get that. And I came home and I put it in my dad's cassette player in the car and like listened to the whole thing. And that was my first money.
Yeah, man.
First album that I bought, off my own money.
Does it start with a Breaking Glass? The beginning of that record?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, I have a Breaking Glass. But that's not
the record.
But that's like how the record starts, right?
Yeah. And Liberty DeVito, I mean, God bless him. He was the one that mentioned that they should put me in the Sticks and Skins book. I don't know if you're familiar with Sticks and Skins.
It's right over there on my shelf.
Jules Follett put out. And so, yeah, he was the guy that was like, you should get Ray LeVier in there.
Yeah, man.
And so that was cool. Jules came down to the 55 bar and took some pictures of me. So thank you, Liberty.
And Jules is like an amazing human. She's the best.
A sweetheart.
Yeah. Sweetheart, just so giving, so appreciative and supportive of the drum community. So that's really amazing. Yeah, man.
Well, my sister had all the albums and like all my, Stevie Wonder. It was like I was listening to Stevie Wonder and like she had, Black Sabbath and all like a really wide array of records and albums and Led Zeppelin. And I just remember the album covers more than anything as a kid, just like flipping through them and being like, wow, that's cool. And, the Black Sabbath song, Sweet Leaf, like starts out, and as a kid, it made me laugh every time I heard this guy choking. I didn't know he was talking about marijuana, but I'm like, I'll play the choking part again. My sister's like, all right, I'm done. It's enough.
Isn't it funny? Like the stuff that you gravitated towards as a kid, like
Bill Ward is like one of my favorite drummers.
Oh yeah, I mean that first Sabbath album is just like killing.
Oof.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, the swing that he incorporates into the hard rock metal stuff is just, you don't get that anymore.
No, man, that was
because all those cats grew up listening to to jazz drummers.
Yeah. Ian Pace too, man.
Oh yeah.
Totally swinging.
The first time I heard that roll of Space Truckin', I was like, nobody can play that fast. Like, is that a trick? I'm asking my teacher, I'm like, is that a trick? He's like, no, man, he's got blinding chops.
Yeah. I remember the first time my buddy, who was a little older than me, he was a guitar player. He played me that tune, Burn. And I was like, what? I was like,
yep.
What is happening? What? No.
Yeah.
Just totally crushing it.
Yeah.
Man. Right. Cool, man. What's the first concert you attended?
Man, Madison Square Garden. I went to see Dio.
Wow.
In high school, yeah.
Okay, so in your teens, how'd you get there, and who went with you?
We had an older friend who was driving, and they got tickets, and my brother was with us, and a few other friends. And
what year was that?
Yeah, man, it must have been like 80, 81.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, like 84, 5, whenever Holy Diver came out.
Okay.
Because that was the tour they were doing, and Vinny Appice, just one of my absolute famous rock drummers, like doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I think,
right.
Just his chops, his feel, his technique, his, ability to play the music for the song
Oh my God.
and fit his stuff in without it feeling weird, you know.
Yeah, man.
And I listen to Dio all the time. I like when I go to the gym, that's what I put on Holy Diver or whatever, you know, and like I listen to different genres for different things, you know. So
Totally. Yeah.
my gym music.
In those days, I mean, probably a few years earlier, but I saw Iron Maiden at the Garden, and I think it was when the was it Power Slave?
Yeah, yep. That was my second concert I ever saw.
Yeah, Wasp opened up, I think.
Yes, Wasp opened up, and I think Dokken opened up for Dio when I saw them.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I remember like the big Eddie thing coming out on stage, and it was
Yeah,
just amazing.
yeah, that was crazy. They had a plane also. They had
Yep.
like this big plane that they had like mounted above the stage. I'm not sure why the plane was there, but there was a plane. I'm pretty sure, unless I was imagining that, but I think that happened.
Well, Bruce Dickinson is a badass commercial pilot. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Actually,
Yeah.
we're
He
working on.
flies the band everywhere. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't. He's not the main pilot, but he's probably like, I want to fly. Get over, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm working on making something happen with Derek Roddy and Nico,
Oh
um,
man,
which would be amazing. Like to go down like some metal rabbit hole with those guys.
that would be
Um,
wicked.
um, cool. What worst or weirdest gig that you ever had?
Uh, there's been a few. I think one of the weirdest gigs I had was like right on Blaker Street. There was some band that I played with, and everything I did was just not right. And it didn't have anything to do with me. It had to do with the singer. And she was so insecure about her thing and so unprofessional. And I was the scapegoat that she kept pointing at to be like, you know, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. I'm like, what do you want? Like, you're not explaining what you want.
She wasn't a
And
French jazz singer, was she?
no, I
I
don't think so.
have a story
But
about
I
that.
got so frazzled during the gig and I had to bring my own kit. And so I packed up my drums and I had them at the foyer at the front. And I went to get my car and I was just so like out of there. I just wanted to get home. Next thing I know, I'm just about to get onto the George Washington Bridge and I'm like, my drums. I forgot my drums.
Oh my!
And I was just like, I got to the car and I'm like, I'm going home. And I forgot that my drums were at the club. That's how frazzled I was.
Wow.
And I just got to the George Washington Bridge all the way from Bleecker Street. It's like, for anybody that's not from Manhattan, then that's a good 30, 40 minutes, you know?
Wait, you were
And I
already
was
on
like,
the bridge?
no, I almost got on the bridge and I was like,
Oh
like
no.
turned around and yeah.
Yeah, that exit right before you go over. You have that exit. I forget what street it is, but you got to go down, make the loop, and then go back. Oh my God.
Yeah. And then the most mortifying thing that ever happened to me was we were in Italy and I was with KJ Denhert and we were like headlining the main Piazza Square or whatever. And it was a sea of thousands of people. And, you know, we got this one tune that's like, and it ends like, what's my name? You know, so she turns around and looks at me and I think this is the end of the song. So I'm like, nobody else is stopping. Oh, I'm like just about to go into my, and everybody just stops and turns around in the band like, what the F are you doing? We're not done with the song. And I just like shrunk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I got angry right after that. I'm like, you know, I pulled her aside and she's like, look, no problem. I'm like, you need to tell me if he's going to solo. Like, I thought we were done. You didn't tell me the keyboard player was going to play a solo. And then we go to the
Oh
retard
man.
to end the tune. So that was like, and you know, everybody knew in the audience, it was just like a big mistake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like,
I
you
mean,
know,
there's few ways, there's a few ways probably to cover that if everybody followed you.
right.
And then
Which
if
they
she
didn't.
wanted to kick it back in, she could have kicked it back in, but like they didn't. So then it makes it even more obvious and awkward. Yeah, man. Those
But I
moments
did,
are
I
tough.
kicked it back in and we, you know, we recovered, but it was obvious, you know, and,
Yeah.
um, there was some heavy people. I mean, Hidalgo was there in the audience, and
Oh,
like
no.
El Negro was there playing with Hidalgo, and like it was just like, oh man. But shit happens.
Shit
What can you?
happens, right? Hey, man,
Yeah.
I'll tell this real quick, but I was playing the Paramount in the city, um, playing for a whole bunch of singers. It was like a big cabaret night, and I was playing behind Lucy Arnaz Jr. And in her book, I only did one read through. I had to play for all these different people, Blythe Danner, like all these different singers, cabaret singers, and so Lucy Arnaz Jr. comes out and we do her thing. I have her charts up, and in the middle of the medley, which we didn't go over in the rehearsal, it says "Wipeout" in big letters, and it's got a section of just drums, and she's gonna dance. And I could not get Wipeout in my head because we were coming out of a swing section.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Wipeout. I'm like, what the hell? I couldn't think of what is Wipeout. Like, could not get that rhythm in my head. So I start playing sing, sing, sing kind of thing instead of Wipeout. The only good thing is it was at the same tempo and
Right.
she was dancing. I think she was kind of looking over her shoulder like, that doesn't sound like Wipeout. And the musical director didn't say anything to me. So I knew that wasn't good.
Yeah.
But instead of doom 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 doom, I'm
Yeah.
going dum dum gong dum gong gong, kind of close,
Right.
like a swinging version maybe of Wipeout. No.
Similar.
Anyway, yeah, not fun. Okay, how
Not
about
as bad as mine.
what's that?
Not as bad as my Wipeout.
Let just a couple drummers then. So, how about? I wanted to ask, favorite bass players on the planet. So Will Lee, I know, has got to be one of your favorites. He's one of
He's got to
everybody's
be
favorites.
their number one.
Yeah, he's man, so great. But who would be another bass player just right off the top of your head?
Francois Mouton, who
All right.
actually played on my Raiseway album. He played with Mike Stern a whole bunch.
Yeah.
The fire and intensity and chops and groove, just the way he swings a band is, just so, it's just incredible.
Yeah. Great. It's funny, like one of my top guys that always pops in my mind, who's not really a jazz guy, Lee Sklar, is always like
Yes,
one of my favorites.
Yeah. There's so many that are just.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pick when you're talking on that level of talent. Yeah.
And Rocco, man.
Rocco,
Prestia.
talk about groove, man. Wow.
Oh my God. I loved having that conversation with Garibaldi about
I bet.
Rocco. Cool, man. All right, couple drummers. So I know you're a huge Tony Williams fan. So when you hear the name Tony Williams, what pops into your head? First words.
Audacity.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, man. I always talk about it. I love those records, Native Heart, and like the stuff that he did under, not under the Lifetime or any of that, just Tony Williams. Those sort of more straight ahead kind of records,
Yeah.
And he's a little more understated, I think, a little bit, on some of that stuff. But I did do a whole dedication to him in my Filling in the Grooves book, which if you don't have I got to get you a copy of that book if you don't have it.
Man, I'll buy it. Support you, brother.
There's a Tony section. It's called 10 Steps to Tony, but it's like 10 Tony fills, so it's pretty fun.
I have a whole section that's going to come out in my book, which is there's a Tony fill off actually Proto Cosmos where he's playing.
Yeah.
That right foot, right, left foot, left.
Yeah, it's in my book.
Oh, there's a whole thing that I take that through and variations upon that I've come up with through the years. And when I heard that fill, that's one of the fills that just blew my mind open and was like, what is that?
In fact, I heard Weckl playing something like that where it's, foot, right, left, right.
Uh-huh.
And he was talking about, but I don't remember if he was giving a nod to Tony, like if you mentioned Tony, but I remember him saying that using that sticking.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. And then when I was transcribing Tony stuff, and I was like, that's that thing, man. That Weckl skull. But yeah, so killer, man. Love it. All right, one more. How about Vinny? We got to talk about Vinny, right?
Michael Jordan of drumming.
Nice.
I mean, every style you hear him play, it's like, oh, that's all he plays.
Yeah.
Like you hear him play jazz, it's like he swings his butt off, and you hear him play metal with Megadeth, and it's like, oh, he's a metal drum. Just chameleon, just complete chameleon.
Total chameleon. I love, and I always love going back to the Zappa stuff because, like, the live footage of Zappa making him do seal sounds and solo on the rototoms.
Yeah, I love that video.
That's just so killer, man. But then there's a Live in Buffalo record, and they're playing Stella by Starlight, and it's just killing, man. So swinging, and they played it totally straight up, no messing around. They just played the tune, and you're like, what? Yeah, it's just like totally killing. Super fun.
Yeah, he's on a Bunny Brunel record, and Chick Corea's on there, and I forgot who else is on there, but maybe Michael Brecker. There's some great swing on there from Vinny.
Yeah. He's just great. And I always talk about the Nick Kershaw stuff because it's like, this sort of slick pop. And then the parts that he put together for that, you're just like, it's so inventive, Yep. Mind blowing.
Yeah, the stuff he did with Sting, and the story of just how he, auditioned for Zapp. I love hearing that story. I just listened to it over and over.
Dude, were you at NAMM in 20?
Yes, I was.
18 or is it 2019? Where Dom
the
interviewed
panel?
with Satriani. I mean with
with
Vi. So
and him telling the story about the sushi and the pushing the glasses up and the.
Oh my God, that's so great.
Yep. I read about that Modern Drummer, that story, and I was like, but to hear Vi tell it was
to
just
hear
like
Vi's, seeing it through his lens, that was just killer. Yeah, that was so great.
Oh man.
Oh man. Holy moly. Dude, what a fun hang.
Thank you so much, man. This has been such a joy, brother.
Well, I always say this to everybody because I really hope to do it again. And bring these back around, once a little time goes by, I'll knock on your door again. I'll be like, hey man, you want to do another one?
It would be nothing short of an honor.
Yeah. We'll have a good time. And just going down, the drumming rabbit hole. And, by the way, anybody that wants to see what Ray is up to, I put Ray's link in the description of this video. So his link tree is there. So go to his link tree, check it out. Check out his recordings. Check out his Instagram. Go see him play live because this man is a killer drummer. He didn't let anything in his life stop him, and he pushed the boundaries really, really far. So, you got to see this man play. I mean, we're talking here tonight, but anybody that's not seen Ray play, you got to see the man play.
Thanks, Kat.
Absolutely killing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And thanks to everybody in the chat that was hanging with us tonight.
Thanks for hanging with us.
And some of my childhood friends that popped in. I love when that happens.
Beautiful.
And man, we should we'll talk soon, and maybe we'll go down a little bit of the mindfulness and drumming sort of rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would love to discuss that and talk in further detail about that because there's some really good stuff, topically that we can anoint ourselves with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, my brother. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I'll see you guys on the next one. And stay tuned for more great interviews. And they're all going to be, of course, archived over on my YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thank you, Ray, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, brother.
All
Thanks,
right,
Jim.
brother. You got it.